If you were fed enough cyanide to kill a stable of horses, you would expect to be dead before your glass hit the floor. But for Grigory Rasputin, the deadliest poison known to man was nothing more than a light appetizer. On a freezing night in 1916, history's most mysterious man was poisoned, shot at point-blank range, beaten, and shot again. And yet, when his assassins leaned over his cold body, his eyes suddenly snapped open and his bloody hands reached for their throats. The story of the Mad Monk of Russia is a descent into madness, royal secrets, and a death so impossible it borders on the supernatural. Was he a holy man with the power to heal, or a demonic force that brought an entire empire to its knees? Today we go beyond the myths to uncover the terrifying reality of the man who simply refused to die. To understand the monster, you have to understand the man who rose from the frozen mud of Siberia. Born in 1869 in the tiny village of Pokrovskoye, Grigory Rasputin was never destined for greatness or royalty. He was an illiterate peasant, a man who spent his youth drinking, brawling, and gaining a reputation as a local troublemaker. But everything changed when he claimed to have a vision of the Virgin Mary while working in the fields. He abandoned his wife and children to become a strannik, a wandering holy man who walked thousands of miles to monasteries. Rasputin didn't join the official church. He joined a secret fringe sect that believed the only way to be forgiven for sin was to commit it first. He developed a magnetic, hypnotic stare that people claimed could see directly into your soul. Word of this mystic from the wilderness spread like wildfire through the Russian countryside. In a society obsessed with the occult and spirituality, Rasputin became a celebrity long before he reached the capital. By 1905, the wandering peasant had finally walked through the golden gates of St. Petersburg. While the public saw a powerful Russian empire, the Romanov family was living in a state of constant silent terror. Tsar Nicholas II and Empress Alexandra had 4 daughters, but only one son, the young Prince Alexei. Alexei carried a hidden curse, hemophilia, a royal disease where his blood refused to clot. A simple fall or a bruised knee could cause internal bleeding that would last for days, leading to agonizing pain and certain death. The best doctors in Europe were powerless, and the Empress was drowning in grief and desperation. Then she heard of the Siberian peasant who could heal with a touch. In 1907, during one of Alexei's most fatal episodes, Rasputin was summoned to the palace bedside. He sat by the boy, told him stories, and prayed with a calm, booming voice. Miraculously, the bleeding stopped, and the boy's pain vanished within hours. To Alexandra, this wasn't medicine. It was a miracle from God. From that day forward, the dirty, unwashed peasant held the life of the Russian throne in his hands. Rasputin's influence grew until he was effectively the most powerful man in Russia. But while the Empress saw a saint, the public saw a sexual predator and a political parasite. Rumors swirled of wild, drunken orgies in the city's bathhouses and secret affairs with the highest-ranking noblewomen. He began advising the Tsar on military appointments and government policy, often firing anyone who dared to speak against him. When World War I broke out, the situation turned from scandalous to deadly. As millions of Russian soldiers died on the front lines, the people blamed the German Empress and her mad monk. The Russian economy collapsed, and the streets were whispering one word: revolution. A group of high-ranking aristocrats realized that as long as Rasputin lived, the monarchy was doomed. They decided that for the good of Russia, the holy man had to be erased from existence. On the night of December 30th, 1916, Prince Felix Yusupov invited Rasputin to his palace under the guise of a social visit. In a soundproofed basement, they offered him cakes and wine laced with enough cyanide to kill 10 men instantly. Rasputin ate. He drank. He even asked for more. The conspirators watched in horror as he sat there, seemingly unaffected, complaining only of a slight tickle in his throat. Panicked and trembling, Yusupov pulled a Browning revolver and shot Rasputin through the chest. The giant man collapsed onto a bearskin rug, his body going limp as a pool of blood spread across the floor. The assassins celebrated, believing the nightmare was finally over. But when Yusupov returned to the basement to check the body, Rasputin's eyes suddenly jerked open. He let out a guttural roar, stood up, and began strangling the prince with superhuman strength. Rasputin broke free and crawled up the stairs, bleeding out into the snow-covered courtyard, screaming for help. The assassins chased him, firing 2 more shots, one hitting him in the back, the final one piercing his forehead. They bound his hands, wrapped him in a heavy carpet, and threw him through a hole in the frozen Neva River. 3 days later, when his frozen body was pulled from the water, the legend took its final, terrifying turn. Rumors spread that his lungs were filled with water, suggesting he was still breathing when he hit the ice. But what does modern science say about the man who wouldn't die? Forensic historians now believe the miracle survival might have been a cover-up for a botched execution. The cyanide may have been old and lost its potency, or perhaps it was neutralized by the sugar in the cakes. The 3rd shot to his head was likely the instant cause of death, fired by a professional who didn't want him to escape. The assassins, led by Prince Yusupov, exaggerated the story to make Rasputin seem like a demon, justifying their brutal murder. But whether he was a supernatural being or just a man with incredible luck, his death changed the world. Before he died, Rasputin sent a letter to the Tsar with a haunting prophecy. He wrote that if he were killed by the nobility, the Tsar's family would be murdered within 2 years. In 1918, exactly as he predicted, the entire Romanov family was executed in a basement in Siberia. Rasputin was the man who broke an empire and walked away from death 3 times in a single night. The mad monk is gone, but his shadow still looms over the history of the world. Do you believe he had supernatural powers, or was he just a master manipulator? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more historical mysteries.